So, Budokai Tenkaichi 4, or Mega Tenkaichi, or Ultimate Tenkaichi 2, or whatever they end up calling it. It's real. Holy shit. I can't believe they're really making a second Tenkaichi 4. Yeah, the impact of this reveal was softened for me slightly because I've already been playing it for a few months now. To be specific, the really impressive and a little weird fan mod made by the DBZ-BT4 team, a Latin American group focused entirely around making Budokai Tenkaichi 4 real. It's a really impressive undertaking, and that surprised me with just how thorough it is. You'd think this announcement would make the mod outdated and useless, but honestly, I think it's got a reason to be evergreen. For one, since the game's based on a pre-existing one, new assets don't have to be made for older characters and stages, so the mod's more or less guaranteed to be an objective improvement over BT3. The only things lost were holdovers from back when the team couldn't feasibly add many new characters, and I feel like we can expect them to show up again in a new patch. Meanwhile, look at this. Imagine making a comparable amount of assets with roughly the same amount of effort to add in, like, Nom. Characters are going to get cut, I can guarantee it. BT3 had as many characters as it did because it was the third installment in a series of games focused entirely around reusing assets with slight retools and upgrades to ease up dev time. I'd be singing a different tune if they did something like reuse Dragon Ball Heroes models, but they're obviously not going to do that for a new console game in 2020X. So, one way or another, I feel pretty confident in saying that BT4 is probably going to have less characters than BT3, which is a little sad because the huge roster is part of the game's identity. That's just one advantage that the mod pack has that the commercial game is not going to support. Now, obviously, it can still exceed it in other ways. The graphics are almost definitely going to be better, for example. It's a difference in 16 years of technological advancements. There were also all sorts of ways to improve the gameplay that you could come up with, like less reused moves or more unique combo paths. But still, the mod pack's got its place in the world, and I want to remind people about it following the big announcement lately. So I'm going to go through the BT4 mod and give you my thoughts on it. I've been making a mod pack for Xenoverse 2 for like 3 years, and I've been modding Goku's for over 6, so I think I've got a special niche here that means I can give some qualified opinions you may not have heard before. Or probably not. It's not like you can be too original about shit like Goku punches correctly, 8 out of 10. To start with, the roster, that's the biggest draw. This game's got a huge roster. It's sort of like a fusion between the Xenoverse 2 and Tenkaichi 3 rosters, plus some exclusions from both and a handful of originals. The best bonus over Xenoverse, though, is that you've got the Tenkaichi transformation system, so you can hop between Super Saiyan 3 and Super Saiyan Blue mid-match, as opposed to the really weird transformation distribution in Xenoverse. Not all characters are made equal, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Obviously, a lot of the newcomers here are from Super, and BT3 already had a lot of obscure picks and deep cuts from the other parts of the franchise, so you end up with a really awesome dream roster. You've also got some really cool non-Super newcomers too, like Hachiak, Kidoob, and GT Goten. On top of that, though, the game's also got costumes, but it uses costumes in a way that's really only been seen in 2 other games before, and sparingly at that. Some of the costumes are entirely different clone characters, and forms too. So, using these costumes, you can also play as characters like GT Trunks, Frost, Palina, Saonel, Copy Vegeta, Kid Pan, Super Saiyan 3 Broly, Golden Cooler, you get the idea. A ton of alternate forms, but also close enough characters who could feasibly have the same moveset. There's one new character in particular who uses this in a really cool way, but they're not playable regularly, so I'll bring that up later. The main drawback to a lot of these new characters is that now, more than ever, there are a lot of non-generic moves that got renamed and copy-pasted. You know how people joke that every character in Tenkaichi is the same? Well, that's not really true. There's a lot of copy-paste, but usually the specials and supers and such had unique animations, effects, and properties that helped every character stand out in their own ways. Even Full Power Energy Wave had different animations between characters. And because a lot of these moves are actually reused now, a lot of signature moves feel less special, even though they were meant to replicate specific moments from the anime and movies. Golden Frieza, for example, inexplicably uses Turtle's ultimate move for his rush attack. Toppo also reuses 3 moves from other characters in total. The worst offender by far is Caulifla, who steals all of her rush attacks from the other female characters in Budokai Tenkaichi 3. In particular, this hurts Pan, since it's one of her only iconic moves, and taking away from her makes her seem all the less important. There are also some really weird moveset choices between characters. Goku's got 2 examples, where they got rid of the coolest move Super Saiyan 2 Goku had and replaced it with another admittedly cool one, which has him transform into Super Saiyan 3. Why not just have that move replace Super Saiyan 3's really lame Super Explosive Wave and keep the old rush? Plus, they had the opportunity to finally fix Super Saiyan 2's really weird Kamehameha business, where he inexplicably uses a bland normal Kamehameha and the Super Kamehameha as his ultimate, even though it's just a regular old super move for Super Saiyan 1. And then you've got things like Super Saiyan Blue using Kaioken for all of the supers, but not the ultimate for some reason, which makes it really hard to accurately recreate the Resurrection F fights without holding back a ton, and of course the manga version too. It's a little frustrating, since they could just remove the red effects and call this move the Burst Kamehameha and it'd be a substantially improved reference. Plus he completely lacks the 1-inch punch, and trust me, I checked everywhere, I couldn't find it anywhere. Aside from Blue Kaioken, it's the most iconic Super Saiyan Blue move, so I think it's a legitimate problem that it's not here. There are other problems too, like God Vegeta having 2 beams for his supers and one of them being completely useless by comparison to the other. Gallic Gun both costs more than Prominence Flash and deals less damage with 0 actual reasons to use it. And of course, you've also got to consider Trunks' 2 new forms, where he inexplicably uses one of Broly's moves for his rush, and all of his abilities in his Super Saiyan Rage form are just copy-pasted from another character. That's not to say that all of the new characters have moves reused from older characters, though. For every reused move, there are at least 2 other completely new ones that fit right in and reference very iconic scenes. Ultra Instinct, Goku even pulls from the manga for his ultimate. Hit and God Goku in particular are fantastic. They pull from all kinds of fights and have a ton of unique animations and properties, and you can really tell that they tried their best to depict them in accurate and fun ways. You've also got overhauled existing characters, in particular Vegito and Gogeta. They've both been given their blue forms, obviously, but then you've got Vegito getting new moves to better depict skills that have been more iconic over the years, like the Big Bang Flash. Gogeta's boring Super Explosive Wave was replaced with Stardust Fall, and he was given a base form to match Vegito's transformation count. There's all sorts of other characters who were revamped just like this, like Cell having his 2 redundant forms fused. You can tell a lot of them were initially just a byproduct of having to cut down on some roster characters to make room for newcomers, but all the same, the decisions made when overhauling characters are very smartly planned out and are almost always a net improvement. The mod pack's a lot more than just characters and stages though, and you can tell the instant you walk into the main menu. Many of these modes have been given a complete makeover with Super and Xenoverse references everywhere. One of my personal favorites is changing the database to be Zuno's Temple, which is a great use of an often overlooked element from Super's new lore, though we've got to be drop dead gorgeous if we're allowed to check out nearly 200 character entries at will. The mission mode has also been overhauled to be based around the Time Patrol from Xenoverse, renaming the mode to Parallel Quests. It's a really inventive retooling that makes the mode a ton more interesting, and it makes it feel like the game is a bunch of Xenoverse content despite not actually adding anything that wasn't already in BT3. This can be also said, more importantly, for what is by far the coolest overhaul mode. BT3 had a fighter growing simulator called Sim Dragon, where you simulated things like going on adventures or training by yourself while managing stamina and health to prepare for fights against big opponents. It was a really cool idea, but BT4 takes it a step beyond in the immersion simply by recontextualizing everything to basically be a microcosm of Xenoverse. You now take control of a proud warrior who considered joining the Time Patrol. As a Time Patroller, you prevent history from being changed. Your duty is to protect everyone's memories and help return history to the way it should be, but you'll need some help. While you really only need to have confidence in your abilities and a strong desire to protect history, there's also a training option to hone your skills in a fully equipped rest stop. There's something fun about honing your strength to help out a great cause. Just be on the lookout for powerful warriors. The Time Breakers are your main targets, with supervillainous enemies posing particularly great threats. Hero Mode, Parallel Quests, all of the general Time Patrol reskinned modes are all now categorized into a submenu called the Time Nest. What's coolest about all these modes is that they give you access to one specific character who you can only play as in these modes, the Time Patroller. The Time Patroller uses a fairly generic moveset, but the new alternate costume system is used to great effect by having each costume be one of 4 different playable races. Each race has its own minor differences in stat growth and playstyles, so it's almost like having a microcosm of Xenoverse's Create a Character feature for all Time Patrol related features. Admittedly, I'd really prefer it if they were also playable in all the other modes as well, but I do appreciate the idea of having this character as a partially customizable playable avatar. The last big feature I want to talk about was also one of BT3's best modes, and BT4 doesn't disappoint here either, Dragon History. This is a mode where you play through a bunch of scripted fights representing scenarios from the anime and manga, retold as playable epic battles with alternate paths, leading to what-if scenarios. While BT4 does cut down on the length of some of the arcs present in BT3, be it either because the characters starring in those chapters don't exist anymore, or some chapters had to be cut to make room for the new ones, it more than makes up for it with a titanic number of new chapters. In particular, an absolutely enormous collection of chapters based around Dragon Ball Super. The depth and professionalism professional presentation of these new chapters is extremely impressive. It focuses on just parts of the anime script and not the manga, but when is that ever not the case, right? Just as an example for how thoroughly dedicated they were to making sure this really did feel like everything was modern, all of Frieza's lines were replaced with equivalent lines from Chris Ayres. All of them. Considering the fact that Chris never really voiced in many games that purely went through BT3 story beats, and how easy it would have been to just mix and match lines from Frieza's old and new VAs, it really impressed me that they went through all that effort. Though it should be noted that English is the second language of this mod, and it tends to show a lot in the subtitles. While the English presentation is far from lacking, and all the voice clips are very well chosen, you can tell that the transliterators didn't always understand or catch every word that was being spoken. This is especially a problem during the Zamasu Center chapters, since Zamasu has a tendency to use an unnecessarily sesquipedalian familiar lexicon when conversing with the hedonistic mortal peons who dare to obstruct his unquestionably divine utopian ideal of a barren, lifeless halcyon via mass human extinction. Even when Zamasu isn't throwing big words out that an ESL listener might not commonly catch, you still get other characters who get misheard, resulting in this absolutely fucking incredible line from Vegeta.
What, you vile bastard!
Please note that the word he's using is vile, V-I-L-E. Small issues like this, plus some of the more questionable examples of asset reuse and moveset cloning, are part of the reason why I often call this mod kind of weird. Pycon used to be the only character with entirely Spanish moves at one point in the English translation, but it's not the end of the world that these kinks and nicks exist. It's a free mod pack made from passion, and you know what? It's entirely worthy of being called Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4. It really is a straight improvement over Tenkaichi 3, and it's smartly reuses even existing features in ways that feel refreshing in their new context. To be honest, even if the new Tenkaichi was never going to be a thing, I would be fine with this mod being the real Tenkaichi 4. It's not perfect, but it's patchable and moddable anyways, so given time, all of its issues would be ironed out. And even if the real Tenkaichi 4 is going to lack a lot of the things I like about Tenkaichi, and it so easily could, I'm not going to be upset, because I got to experience what I wanted from such a game already, and I got to experience it for free. This is why fan games and mods and such are so useful for even big-named properties. When we only have the official products and they fail us, we feel betrayed, because our hype and expectations were dashed. But so long as we've got these fan projects that fully deliver, even if not perfectly, then it's easier for us to better accept how newer games can excel in their own unique ways. So I'm not afraid of this new Tenkaichi being different. It can have a smaller roster, or even use transformations a little bit differently. I'm just excited to see how it tackles the formula in a new way. And it's all because this lovingly crafted mod, made by a bunch of dudes with toaster computers and a dream, is always around to give me what I've wanted. I don't need to feel disappointed, because now I get to have the best of both worlds.